Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to my 1967 MGB GT. For those of you who've been following other videos on my Instagram, you'll know that this car's been off the road for over a month, having some work done to it. I took this car to CCK Historic, who are a well-regarded classic car garage in Sussex, and they work on a variety of cars including MGs and Triumphs as well as historic race cars, which is kind of how I heard about them in the first place. They also campaign in the modern Carrera Cup, so that's CCK Motorsport if anybody wants to give them a follow. Lots of interesting stuff on there on Instagram and stuff. Now, the reason I took this car to CCK Historic in the first place was to get it a bit sort of tuned up and looked at from sort of a safety point of view, because I don't really get this car MOT'd very often, and it's easy for things to corrode or get worn, which you wouldn't really know about day-to-day driving. So looked over by a professional just to make it safe really, so I can do some longer trips in it. Now, one of the things I had done was a gearbox oil change, and in the gearbox oil there appeared to be some bits of gear that came out on it, which is obviously not great news. So what started off as a sort of simple service and check has escalated into a fair amount of work. So I'll go through what I've done and kind of how much it's cost me. So the first thing, obviously, that I've just mentioned was the gearbox rebuild. So once they saw that the gears were in the oil, they removed the engine, removed the gearbox, had a look inside, and it was in a bit of a sorry state actually. So some of the gears had teeth missing, a lot of the bushes had disintegrated, and if you've been watching any of my other MGB videos, you might have noticed there was quite a lot of noise coming from the gearbox, kind of a whooshing noise, which I'd sort of wrongly assumed that was normal. And now driving the car after I've had it rebuilt, there are cows here making lots of noise. I'm in the Ashdown Forest actually. I came here in the Jaguar not too long ago, but this isn't too far from where CCK Historic are based, so thought I'd do my video here, but now I'm being interrupted by wildlife. So anyway, yeah, gearbox rebuild as well as a new clutch, so that's all good. While it was in, it also had some suspension work done, so it now sits on lower springs in the rear and at the front, about an inch lower, and I've had other bits and pieces that were worn out sorted in the suspension as well, including a wheel bearing that needed sorting there. So to add to that list, the other thing I really wanted the car to do was to get tuned on a rolling road, just from curiosity standpoint, to make sure it was running as well as it could do and just see kind of what power it was making. Now bear in mind this is an MGB, so it's never going to produce that much power in standard trim, but I wanted to see sort of how far I was off of standard output, and based on the fact I've got Weber carburetor and a couple other bits on there, which it should give you a performance increase, a very slight performance increase at the top end, but you never know what your engine's doing sort of day to day with the butt dyno that people talk about. So giving it to them, they had to put it on the rolling road, and I was quite pleased with the results actually. So I need a new air filter, so they ran it with and without an air filter, which gave it a slightly bigger increase in performance at the top end, and without an air filter it's something like 95.6 horsepower, and that's corrected for the sort of engine horsepower, so it's 68 horsepower at the wheels, which is kind of in the ballpark of a standard car. I think if you're talking about a standard good car, then people sort of say 65 horsepower is sort of the power to the wheels that you'll get from that. So I'm quite pleased with that actually. That means that it's pretty much standard, maybe a slightly bit over, which is great. So what does all this work mean actually driving the car then? So as I've mentioned, the gearbox is a lot quieter now, a lot less of the whooshing noises that I was getting previously, and the gearbox feels more precise as well. So getting into second gear, a gear I used to have a bit of an issue with, going from say third to second, I used to sometimes get over to reverse, which would be a real horrible crunchy noise. Now there's no danger of doing that because second feels very much in the right position. The other thing as well is I used to have a bit of a clonking noise. So when the car wasn't accelerating or slowing down, it would sort of clonk in that sort of neutral position, and that's gone. So either the gearbox rebuild's got rid of that, or replacing the diff oil has tightened things up in there somehow. Maybe some gaskets have expanded or something like that, but certainly feels a lot more precise to drive, a lot sharper, and the same with the engine as well. So I don't know again if it's perhaps just slop in the drivetrain or engine mounts or gearbox mounts, all of which have been replaced. Everything just seems to be a bit sharpened up, and pushing down the accelerator pedal translates to immediate acceleration, no nasty clunks or delays or whatever. So very, very enjoyable to drive. To go with that, the suspension, the lowered suspension, again gives it a little bit of a firmer feeling on the road, but not uncomfortable. But I do think I've got a bit of a clearance issue now with the rear tyres, and I might have to get my arches rolled or get a smaller tyre size or whatever to try and sort that problem out. But it's only a niggle at the moment. It's kind of hitting the tyre slightly, which is a bit annoying. But yeah, the brakes as well. The brakes, the pedal seems a lot more firm. I don't know if they changed the brake fluid. I guess they had to bleed the brakes if they were, taking suspension bits apart. I don't know. Perhaps they have or not, or maybe it's just adjusting the rears. They definitely adjusted the rear brakes, and the handbrake feels better now. So maybe it's just a result of that. What I wanted to say was a big thank you actually to CCK Historic and a guy called Daniel Lackey, who I've been in contact with during this process. He's kind of been the main point of contact at CCK, and great communication, explaining kind of the things that I needed done and costs and that kind of stuff. So really, really great, transparent work being done by those guys, and really pleased that they indulged me. I mean, they have so much cool stuff going through their garage, stuff which is a lot more expensive and interesting than my humble MGB, but they've treated me with sort of respect, and this isn't an expensive classic car, and there's hundreds of them, but I feel like I've got the same level of service as someone who would come in with something a lot more valuable and rare had got. So really, really good. And Daniel also gave me a lift from the station to the garage the other day in his 996, which was brilliant, and the first time I've been in a Porsche 911 as well, so that was a bit of a treat for me. So yeah, massive thank you to those guys over at CCK. I'll definitely be using them again in the future, and if you're in Sussex or Kent or indeed East Surrey like me, and you fancy getting some work done in your classic car, then I can definitely recommend them. It's cost an awful lot of money to have all this stuff done, and it feels way better than it did, but from outward appearance doesn't look like I've spent any money on it. But it's kind of the stuff I should have been doing regularly, I suppose, and it's deferred maintenance that kind of has caught up with me now, and kind of hit me all at once. So the overall cost for this, I won't go into the detail figures because there was an awful lot of work done there, as well as sundry items, etc., but it starts with a 4, and there are a few other numbers after that, so not an insignificant amount of money invested in this car, but I do totally think it's worth it. As I say, it's kind of deferred maintenance plus a couple of extra bits which I wanted done, and I'm really happy with the result. So what does this mean for the MG now? Well, I want to take it on longer trips, as I've mentioned, and maybe not the kind of trip that you'd imagine an MG going on either. So I won't say anything more now, but hopefully we'll see this car doing a bit more adventuring in the next few months, depending on weather and that kind of thing, and hope to bring you another MG video very soon. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, a bit of a reveal of the work that I've had done to it, as well as the cost, and a hint of my future plans there. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye bye.